What is up, greedy guts? It's your boy Big Umami, and today we're gonna have to say thank you to good old Santa Claus for bringing me this little bundle of joy, the Behringer TD-3. So for those who are not familiar with it, this is the clone of the legendary TB-303, which really needs no introduction, but in order to give you some context, it's the one that sounds like this. So yeah, I haven't got much to say about it except for the fact that I've been wanting a 303 for years, and this one was stupid cheap. It was around 105 euros, mostly because probably they weren't selling that many in transparent red. I wonder why. Anyway, today we're gonna try and set it up with my Volca Sample and my Roland SP404MKII. We're also gonna try and explain how the sequencer works, and spoiler alert, is not easy. And then hopefully we're gonna have a little jam together at the end. But before we do any of that, I'm sorry to hijack this tutorial, but we do have breaking news. Breaking news, everybody! You ready? Alright, here it comes. I'm releasing a full 7-track album next week under my alias Tomato Breaks. And yes, I will release music as Big Umami in the next few months as well, but while I consider Big Umami to be my electronica house outfit, Tomato Breaks is for all things regarding, you know, my drum and bass, jungle, breakbeat, instrumental hip-hop side. And in this case, I'm coming out with a release that is purely drum and bass. It's heavily inspired by my, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. I guess you could call it, you know, liquid drum and bass, but I don't know. Yeah, it's called line wiring anyway. So shout out to the true OGs who know what LimeWire is. And yes, that is me as a 10-year-old on the cover. Anyway, it is already available for pre-order on Bandcamp. I'll put a link up here and in the description box below, so you can go on that link and pre-order it right now and listen to the first track, which I guess it will be the single from that album. But next week though, I'll fully release the whole album on Bandcamp and on this page for free. So this is not the first album that I've ever released in my life, but this is the first album that I kind of completed while working on this YouTube channel. So I'm very excited about it. It would mean the world to me if you could just you know, go and pre-order it and, you know, let Bandcamp know that you were interested in it. And you know, if you don't want to do that, you know, wait until next week and give it a spin on this here page. Well, again, it will be completely streamable in its entirety for free, whatever. Anyway, let's jump back into the task at hand. Alright, so let me just explain this setup for a second. The SP404MKII is sending a MIDI out signal to the TD-3. By the way, this cable is a TRS to MIDI type A. I repeat, this is a type A cable, because apparently synth manufacturers couldn't just pick up the phone and put the shit together for 1 second, and now we have 2 different standards for mini jack MIDI ports. Trust me, I found out the hard way. Anyway, this cable goes out to the TD-3, the same MIDI signal sent out from the SP404 then comes out of the MIDI through port on the TD-3 and goes into the Volca Sample. In order to make it all work, you have to go to your 404 and press Shift plus 13. This will bring up a system menu, navigate to MIDI and enable the MIDI out. Just copy the same settings that you're seeing on screen right now. On the TD-3, you have to press these 2 buttons right here, plus the D note. This will activate the MIDI sync mode, which means that every time there is a start-stop signal coming from the SP404, the TD-3 will either start or stop. The Volca doesn't really need any adjustments as it's set to MIDI also by default and should be good to go. Audio-wise, these 2 go into this tiny little mixer, and then the mix signal goes into the SP404 for some compression. I love this mixer, it's 4 channels, it doesn't require batteries, it's tiny, and I have a full video dedicated to it if you're interested. Anyway, this is what I came up with on the Volca Sample and SP404. It's a nice groove, but you can tell it's in dire need of a classic squelchy 303 bass line. And so how do you write bass lines on the 303? Well, this is where it gets interesting. The 303 keeps the timing and pitch separated. So either you start with a timing that you had in mind, or you start with a succession of notes. I'm much more of a rhythm guy, so I'll start there. You have three choices: step, tie, and rest. Step means that you're playing a note. Tie means that you want the previous note to carry over to the current 16th, and rest means that you just want that 16th to be silent. And I want the rhythm to go something like da 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 da. And so for that you have to input step, step, rest, step, rest, step, rest, rest, step, rest, step, 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 rest, step, rest. Once we've got our rhythm, we need some notes, and take note of this, as it's very, very, very important. The notes that you input are only relative to the steps in your sequence, not the rests, nor the ties. So in this case we have 9 actual steps in our sequence. It doesn't matter how many rests and ties we have in between to get up to the 16 number. So we're gonna input 9 notes in order, and they will end up where the steps are. And for me, these notes are ADD, AAD, DAD. Very simple. Once our rhythm and pitches are taken care of, let's go back to pitch mode and add some cool details like slides and accents. A octave down, slide on. D accent. D octave down. A octave down, slide on. A octave down. D accent. D octave down, slide on. A slide on. And finally D octave down, slide on. And this sounds awesome. So yeah, I guess this is a cool different way of writing bass lines, but at the same time it's f***ing bullshit, because I didn't come up with this bass line on the machine itself. No, just like anybody with a tiny sense of self-respect, I actually used the software that comes with this machine to create this pattern. As you've probably noticed by now, the TD-3, just like the 303, is way too complicated to program. That is, unless you already know what kind of bass line you want for your song, and on top of that, you know how to write it in music notation. You can't really just jam with this like you would do with other machines. You can't even play the notes on the keyboard. I mean, but when you think about the genesis of the TB-303, it kind of makes sense, because this was originally created for people who wanted an actual bass accompaniment for their songs. And of course, it sounded nothing like an electric bass, blah 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 blah. We all know the story by now. But yeah, this explains why this is so hard to program. And so, when cloning the original machine, Behringer, in true Behringer fashion, decided to stick with the original sequencer, because hey, why on earth would we ever spend money and effort in rebuilding the sequencer when we can just keep it as is and then slap a USB port on top of it? Yeah. To be honest though, for a retail price of €105, I can't be mad at it. And the software works fine for the most part. You input the notes or leave blanks which will be interpreted as rests. You can right click to add slides and accents. And for ties you put 2 of the same notes together with the slide turned on the first note. The only issue with the software is that you have to press the button to store the pattern, as it doesn't change in real time. So when you work on a pattern, it's gonna be a lot of start and stops, start and stops, start and stops, which is kind of maddening. Honestly, the quickest way to fix this problem would be to sequence this from a DAW via USB, which you can do on this machine, or from something like a Digitax, which I might have bought myself as a birthday present. so stay tuned for that. That way you can play it as an instrument, you can also build incredibly long complex sequences, but also save all the features that make this machine iconic, like for example the accent. You just need to know that anything over the velocity of 92 is interpreted as an accent on this machine. And for the slides, well, just make the previous note overlap with the second note, and there you go, you have slides. So to recap, this machine is hard to program. You most likely need a DAW or an external piece of gear to make it work a bit more, flawlessly. So why would you buy it? Well, it's the sound. I mean, it's a 303, what can I say? The accent, the natural swing that the slides provide, the squelching tones. I mean, it's a classic. And there are plenty of 303 emulations with a much better sequencer out there, but most of them are way more expensive than the TD-3, or they don't sound as close to the 303 to begin with. Anyway, speaking of how this sounds, I'm gonna leave that to your judgment with this quick little jam. That's it, thank you so much. If you like the drums that I've used in this jam, you can find them in my sample packs, Big Umami Bombs Volume 1, and that's on my website bigumami.com. Also about the samples, but you do like my videos and you want to show me support, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/bigumami. Speaking of which, I'd be remiss if I didn't include a huge shout out to Volca who bought me not 1, not 2, not 5, but 10 coffees. That is insane, because 10 coffees is 50 euros, which is a huge amount of money for a channel my size. And in conjunction with the incredibly kind words that you have written me in the comments and on my Buy Me a Coffee page, yeah, these things are the reason why I keep making videos, because it ain't easy. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning because I have a full-time job and a wife and a kid. So yeah, thank you for giving me great motivation, both financially and spiritually. And yeah, the video was already done and edited almost, but I couldn't, you know, I had to give you a shout out. Thank you, Volca Rocker. Also, again, a quick reminder that my album is coming out, so click in the description box below, and yeah, see you next week.